Digestive health is super important. And that's where a lot of focus is, both on the production animal side as well as the equine side. We are figuring out the gut microbiome and how important the gut microbiome is. And the gut microbiome probably really drives everything in our body. And so as we start having leaky gut syndrome, as we start seeing acidosis, that's going to affect the overall health and issues in our animals. It's a big driving force of our immunity, our stress, our overall health.
Welcome to the Beef Podcast. I'm Travis Mullenix, and today I'm glad to have Dr. David Dutton from Texas Tech University in the vet school with me. Hello, Dr. Dutton.
Hello, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great having you. And so just for the audience benefit, I know you're a veterinarian and you're at Texas Tech. Just give a overall background of what you do and kind of how you got where you are today.
You bet. So I am a veterinarian. I did advanced training. I actually boarded in surgery, large animal surgery. I practiced for 20 years prior to joining on the team at Texas Tech. Mainly focused on equine, but I do a lot of the, I'd say, specialty show cattle, as well as do some consulting in some of the cow-calf operations, and we raised and showed cattle as well too. Role at Texas Tech, obviously it's a fairly new vet school. It's been 4 years in the making, and so we have our fourth year class there now. But my main role there was surgery related, both curriculum-wise for large animals, equine and food animal. I currently oversee the clinical programs where we have students rotating, and I still practice as well for both equine and do some food animal consulting.
And you got a lot going on then.
A fair amount, yes.
Is stress affecting your bottom line? Even routine handling, inclement weather, weaning, and dietary changes can significantly lower the rumen pH, causing cortisol levels to spike. Cortisol not only compromises the immune system, but also suppresses normal appetite and feed consumption. The solution? Cattle Active. Increase production and reduce the impacts of stress on your cattle for cents a day. Cattle Active restores the balance naturally. Want to learn more how a feeding program including Cattle Active can improve both profits and herd health? Visit us today at proearthanimalhealth.com. Be proactive with Cattle Active.
So for any of pre-vet or students that are in vet school that could be listening to this, is we've seen a increased number of veterinarians leave practices or after so long of being in a practice go into academia or go into the industry as consultants. Any recommendations do you have for those vet students as they're preparing for whether or not it's a career in a practice or looking at other avenues?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of options and a lot of avenues, both from an industry standpoint, as well as practice standpoint, as well as academics. One of the things, we have a very focused mission at Texas Tech, and that's what drew me back into academics and helping with the university. We know, as you were saying, there's we see a shift or a drift or loss, especially from large animal practitioners. And so our goal is to help that plus rural and regional areas of the state. We have a migration of veterinarians typically out of that area. And as the population grows, there's more and more draw and demand. So to meet that mission, that need, we are focusing on more broad experience in the rural regional communities. And for that reason, if be part of the solution. So I still get to do both. So I'm helping with that mission as well as still practicing. So you can do a hybrid as well. Industry, there's a lot of opportunities in industry. As we advance, companies are needing those specialties and those skills, and as production problems arise, and we become or need to become more and more efficient,
Right.
more and more veterinarians are becoming involved in that as well.
No, I think just from the vet school standpoint of having someone that had 20 years experience come back into vet school and teach provides a wealth of background and knowledge that can really help set up students go forward into that career.
For sure, and that's the way we looked at it. We wanted to help bring what's needed out in practice back to the vet school, and it's reverse migration of the curriculum is the best way to describe that.
Yeah. Well, to move into the topic at hand and talk about digestive health, and so this is becoming a hot topic of leaky gut, of issues with acidosis, and so we're seeing an increase in some feed additives or some drenches, etc., on the market today. And you've worked with a company on some of this, uh, and probably do some consulting, but uh, can you just go over some of the issues that a lot of producers are having that you're seeing from the veterinary side that some of these products are helping with?
You bet. I think, like you said, digestive health is super important. And that's where a lot of focus is, both on the production animal side as well as the equine side. We are figuring out the gut microbiome and how important the gut microbiome is.
Mm-hmm.
And the gut microbiome probably really drives everything in our body. And so, as we start having leaky gut syndrome, as we start seeing acidosis, um, that's going to affect the overall health and issues in our animals. It's a big driving force of our immunity, um, our stress, our overall health, and so good healthy GI is super important for the rest of the animal as well.
So what are some of these products, or what's their mode of action of helping some of these issues with leaky gut or just digestive health?
So one in particular, the one that I am have a fair amount of experience in and involved with is like cattle active, and so the main component there it's a acid buffer or neutralizer. So if we can suppress the acid in the GI tract, and as we talk here specifically in the rumen, we're going to get healthier microbes within that rumen. And the microbes are what do all our digesting and breaking down feedstuffs in order for them to be utilizable. So really the rumen's a big mixing vat. So if we can improve the health and our microbes present within that rumen, we're going to have healthier microbes, which are the actual component that's supplying our feed to the animal.
So is this a product that producers or backgrounders are utilizing at receiving end, or are they utilizing this at different time points, or what's the best time point? Are you finding that some of these products should be utilized?
You bet. I think you can start from the very get go. So anytime an animal is stressed, um, they're going to have elevation in their stress hormones, cortisol levels, and that's also going to have a negative effect on their. It's just like how you get nervous, you get those butterflies in your stomach. Well, uh, your pH in your stomach's decreasing. So anytime we stress an animal, is a good time to try to help buffer that and neutralize their acids. And so, on calves, and we'll just start off from the very beginning. So when we're dealing with our cow calves, and we have our calves that are being born, if they are under any kind of stress, or we have any sickness or disease processes going on, that's a good time to go ahead and treat with cattle active and with an acid buffer. Um, Anytime they're worked, branded, processed, under stress, that's also going to help. Transportation's a big one. And so that really helps as far as to try to get good, healthy calves. And as they've looked at their numbers, you're seeing increased pounds, and increased pounds means increased profit. So that's increasing your profitability. The next step from there, and this is where I've done some recommendations and consulting are from there where I call them the guys that are potentially starting to precondition, and they're getting calves from multiple areas and co-mingling them. And as we get those cattle being co-mingled, and some of them might go on into feed out, some others might be stalkers, but as those cattle are starting to be co-mingled, it's kind of like going to daycare. And so they're being exposed to a lot of different diseases and problems that they're naive to, and they're also stressed, and so that is probably the time that we can have a significant impact in trying to improve the overall health of that animal. So with our gastric neutralizers, buffers of our pH, if we can improve rumen health, we're going to also improve immunity. We're going to decrease the stress and improve the overall health of that animal.
So let's go back to, you mentioned like a VAC 45 preconditioning program. If I'm a cow-calf producer, and so there's multiple stressors there in that situation of the weaning stress. You also have the stress of being shipped somewhere.
Right.
So if I'm a cow-calf producer, when should I be looking at utilizing this product of drenching that calf or feeding it in that preconditioning diet?
Right. I think that, as you're going through your vaccination programs and vaccinating those calves, and then anytime they're coming through the chute, that's a perfect opportunity that you can drench and treat. From that standpoint, if once they're weaned and they're in the pens, they're under a lot of stress, and probably one of the easiest ways, as long as they're going to water, is to you can medicate the water, and so you can put this in the water, and so you're not having to rework those calves, and you're able to do that. And most calves are going to go to water before they go to feed. Your other option is to go to feed. You can put out tubs. You can also mix it in your ration. But a lot of times they're not eating at the levels that they should be. So one of the ways I found that it's more convenient and easy is I can dose that water at the needed amount based on what their typical water intake is. I mean, a rough rule is a gallon per 100 pounds, so that works out when we start dosing. And so that's one of the easiest ways that I found to help get that product in them during that time.
So there's no concern with overconsumption or any kind of toxicity effect of them drinking too much in that.
There's no side effects or concerns. We always want them to drink more than less, and
Yeah.
they tend to, and so that's one of the things that we actually see as we improve rumen health and decrease the stress. We'll see increased water consumption, and then obviously increased feed consumption as well.
Is this something that once you get them on it, they need to stay on it every day, or something? If talking about, have a tub out there, they may not always eat it every day.
Right.
So you may have some infrequency of use. So is it something to concern about with everyday use versus every other day or infrequent use?
No, I think it's the only time I'm really concerned about it that they're in my hands, or what I'm looking for is during those stressful events, and so those are other avenues that it can be presented to them. That's where I prefer, medicating the water from the standpoint. I'm in that set time period. Now, after that time period, it depends on what you're doing. If they're going out on grass, then you're probably you might have supplemental lick tubs out there, and in that, with your increased protein, you can also have the cattle active component within that. So you're getting both benefits in that situation. If I was feeding and until or either having issues or trying to prevent issues, then you could mix it within the feed as far as their medicated pelleted form.
Besides some of those issues, what kind of other benefits are y'all seeing with feeding these products?
So beyond decreasing the stress, increased feed consumption, increased water consumption, and overall health, uh, a big one, just like we mentioned a little bit earlier, but is increased rate of gain
Mm-hmm.
and increased pounds. So that always increases. That's increasing your profitability. Um, outside of, and probably this is more moving into the realm of where we're using it. Or I had my first experience. A lot of it's in the show cattle world. So we're seeing um, um, those animals being way more comfortable, more docile, increased water intake, feed intake when that normally drops, especially whenever they're being hauled or at shows or in different locations. Um, and so those cattle look fresher and healthier, and they're also less. They're more. Best word's probably more docile.
Yeah, so that was going to be my next question: is transport stress and them being shrunk up coming off of the trailer after a long haul, of seeing any benefits of getting them back on water, getting them back on feed.
A lot. So with the ones pre-treated before hauling, they're much more apt and recover much quicker, less shrink, less dehydration, better feel, and then they get on water and they get on feed a lot quicker, and um, they don't have that real big setback 1 2 days trying to adapt to that. They're rolling on into their normal routine.
So, are there any other situations or production scenarios that producers may want to look at utilizing these outside of kind of that stressful time point around weaning and receiving?
Right. The others, and I keep it on hand just like you might any other medication to treat problems. So I've used it a fair amount in chronic bloat cases or animals that have a propensity to bloat or do bloat. And so we see some surfactant effects as far as improving health. So um, we will treat bloats with it and then keep them on it as they're coming back on and feed, or if they have a predisposition to decrease the incidence of them bloating. So that's one of the biggest areas that I've used it in is in our bloats, and especially our chronic bloats. At the same time, some of our respiratory diseases, and in those cases, we see an improvement in assisting or helping with their immunity. So if we can improve their immune response, they're going to recover and do better. Plus, I don't think there's a lot necessarily proven on it, but if you have a sick animal, respiratory animal, they're going to get lower pHs in their stomach, more acidotic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're going to blow that off, and so now you're blowing off a higher, because they regurgitate, and so as they regurgitate, you have a more acidic environment, and that's going to be more irritating to the lungs as well. So again, that's a big cycle. But if we can improve and elevate the rumen pH, then that eructation is going to be less irritating, which can have less effects on the lungs from a respiratory standpoint. The other areas obvious is related to the GI tract is diarrhea, scours,
Okay.
and so if we can improve the overall health and the microbial population for a healthier microbial population, they're going to recover better, and so it's also used in the treatment of diarrhea as well too.
Yeah. So you mentioned scours, and uh, think about newborn calves and having outbreak of scours and issues with scours. Is this something that you could treat maybe pre-calving? Would that impact the cow and the subsequent offspring? Or
If you can, I have not used it specifically that way. Usually I typically see more fire engine medicine. So now you
yeah,
got a calf that has scours, we're
yeah,
treating the calves with it. But yes, that's a great situation or scenario that if we can, if the cow's healthier and her immune system's better and she's not stressed, that's going to pass on with calf health as well. I think on the calves and scours, there's some other environmental factors and management factors that play a big role in it. But if we have a healthier cow, we're going to have a healthier calf, and that's one way to help combat it.
So has there been a lot of research or more research with using this product from, Texas Tech or you've been involved with from a consulting side?
As far as the company itself, they've done some different comparison feed trials. They've and some of it's been up in the Panhandle as far as look at decreased death loss, increased rates of gain, improvement both in a feedlot situation, dairy situations as well. And so they have that data, that information, and shown where the benefits are in decreasing overall death loss as well as improvement in overall health to improve weight gains. And on the dairy cattle side, that's calf loss as well as milk production, super important from that standpoint.
Who will be the bigger adopter of this, the dairy side or the beef side?
I think that as we get into higher production and pushing that limit,
Mhm.
and that mixing vat that we're talking about, there's probably a lot more concerns that we deal with on the dairy side because we're pushing them to the max,
Right.
and so if we can alter those effects, that's probably where it's going to have the biggest part. Um, from the feedlot standpoint, there's certain periods of time, and I think that's where they got to look at if they're having an issue or more of an issue in either the ration that they're feeding or getting those cattle coming in on feed, or if there's a point in time where they're seeing increased numbers of bloats or increased number of acidosis cases,
Right.
um, then that's when it becomes, hey, I got a problem here now, and in this phase of production of looking and adding the product cattle active into that program.
Yeah, especially the lots they're bringing in high risk calves
Right.
and trying to straighten things out, whether or not it's on a grass or in a lot. But haven't really thought too much on the dairy side of the benefits that the dairy cow that has some metabolic challenges during that lactation time point of all the stress that they're under and some of the disease risks that they go through.
Exactly. Well, and it's down the line too. If you start looking at the stress levels of the calves, those calves have different inputs that increase their stress as well. So if we can improve the health of the calves and be able to manage them during those higher risk standpoints, um, that's overall benefits the whole operation.
Yeah. So in a scenario that the calf is not high risk, let's say a producer backgrounding their own animals, and so which is going to be a low risk,
Right.
low stress situation that outside just weaning. Uh, what kind of benefits would they see by using this outside of they don't have necessarily have the big stress effects that a backgrounding lot would or bringing something in.
So the main points of where you'll see the benefit and are going to be the time points whenever they're still working those cattle as far as stress. So when they're vaccinating and when they're weaning them, when they're first putting them into their yard,
Yeah.
during those stressful events, that's where it makes economic sense to look at using that product. Once those animals have settled in, then at that point in time, it might not be beneficial. But at some point in time, unless they're carrying them to slaughter weight, and if they're moving them on, then they also want to prep them because they've put a lot of money and time in to put those pounds on.
Right.
You want to decrease your shrink, and you want positive on that next phase of production that they move on to. So you start looking at those stressors in that particular situation and being proactive in treatment rather than reactive or taking those losses that you could avoid.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, is there anything you want to touch on that didn't ask or we didn't get into?
I think we covered it pretty good. I think some of the things, and we talk always GI and areas there, and similar. And like I said, I do a lot on the equine side, but the the importance of or the ability to decrease the overall stress levels of those animals, and I think that's one of the big benefits, and that's probably where we use it a lot more on our equine side. And we tend to do, obviously, hauling, transporting, performance. And so if we can treat during or prior to those stressful events, mostly with our drench products, same on the cattle side, we're going to decrease their overall stress hormone or cortisol. If we can decrease their cortisol, that's helping them from a metabolic standpoint, as well as just demeanor and behavioral and being able to handle them as well too. So I think there's some other benefits beyond just that probably maybe should just point out that on the stress standpoint, that's where we're seeing a lot of benefit as well too.
So if I caught you, they're using this product with horses as well as
Yeah.
performance horses, etc., that are getting hauled around performing showings.
So on the horse side, it's called Zestera. So that will be the product name, but it's again it's a acid buffer, and so acid neutralizer. And but what we have seen is helps to increase the pH in the stomach.
Mhm.
There's been a lot more where we look at ulcers in horses, and 70% of our performance horses experience or deal with ulcers. So if we can decrease the incidence of ulcers, that's the main focus. So we look at it for any time during stressful events or hauling of treating to increase the gastric pH. At the same time, and this is where I get a lot. I have a lot of horses that travel far and go to a lot of shows. I'll have horses that go out to. We're fixing to come up out in a couple months to Las Vegas for all our ropings out there as well as the NFR, and so we have tons of horses going that way. A lot of those horses aren't necessarily used to it, but I always got the call or the problem, hey, I'm here, but my horses aren't drinking or eating. So we have become a lot more proactive and put those uh, horses on Zestera. And so when they hit there, they're drinking better, they're eating better, they're settling in better. We have a lot less complications. They're performing better, and it's also boosting their immunity because again, we're getting horses from all over the country, and they're all being congregated in one place. So
Yeah.
so that's where we're using a lot on the equine side of things.
Yeah. Very similar as receiving into a feedlot of.
Exactly.
It's time for our famous three.
Well, thank you for the time. Really interesting to talk about some of these products that Pro Earth Animal Health have and some of the benefits that you guys have been seeing from their products.
Thank you. Yes, it's I think pass it on, and there's different areas where you can look at using it and have some positive benefits.
Oh, great. To wrap us up, I've got 3 optional questions for you.
You
And so the first one is, what is your go-to beef related book, website, resource that you highly recommend people utilizing?
Well, we're lucky and we're here in Texas, but I pick up and read a lot of our articles in the Cattleman from Texas Cattle Raisers Association. So they have really good articles in there. I think they're short, quick, brief. From there, typically as we look online, we'll see. I'll get it wrong, but the Beef Magazine, they'll have some articles in
Yep.
there as well that are general, and I think that's good for the producers and to keep track. from that standpoint on, especially what I do, we get into the deeper levels
Right.
of what we read. But I think a good I've been very, very pleased with the articles that they put out with the cattlemen.
So what is a book that you highly recommend people reading? Doesn't have to be a beef related resource.
I think in that area, I tend to focus a lot more on probably being nerdy and reading a lot of journal articles. So I think for the general public out there, I think you look at the one, and it's not necessarily beef related at all, but I think that it's are fairly well rounded. I look at a lot, but I'll pick up the wildlife magazines. It gives you some ideas there and gives you a different view on different management styles from that standpoint. I've incorporated some of that into the way I think about things, and as we were talking, the horse, that's another good magazine, just from the equine side of things, non beef related.
Yeah. Well, wildlife management is a large economic driver for a lot of our cow-calf producers, especially in Texas. And so that's a great resource for them. So lastly, what sets apart, in your opinion, a successful beef professional?
I think one is being able to readily adapt, and I think adaptation is the key, and being able to, and with adaptation, that covers a lot of things. So as you face a problem, try to identify that problem, and then be willing to adapt to accomplish a positive outcome.
No,
And we're seeing a lot of change, and so, but I think adaptation is the one that probably covers the most of mine.
yeah, that's a great attribute to have, is the ability to adapt to situations. Well, thank you for the time for jumping on the Beef Podcast. Really enjoyed talking to you about Pro Earth Animal Health products of Catalyst and seeing what they have going on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.